Hey guys, welcome to Hype Gamer Network. If you're passionate about gaming, industry news, or the future of games that we love, you come to the right place. Before we get started, take a second and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. It really helps support the channel and it ensures that you never miss out on the biggest stories. Now, imagine it's Christmas morning, you're 10 years old, you race into the living room, and there it is, a brand new PlayStation waiting there underneath the tree. Next to it is a stack of games wrapped in shiny plastic. Maybe it's Crash Bandicoot, Gran Turismo, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII. You tear apart the wrapping as fast as you can. The new game smell still hits you the second you open it up. You crack the case, you flip through the instruction manual before, and you're rushing to plug it in. You admire the artwork, the disc. Your place is to carefully place it into the PlayStation, and that satisfying click, and the magic suddenly happens. Ownership. A memory is born. Millions of gamers have stories just like that. Some remember waiting outside a GameStop at the midnight release of a newest game, such like, for example, Call of Duty. Others remember saving allowance money for months just to buy one game. Some spent Saturdays browsing the shelves at Walmart, Best Buy, or the local game store, comparing covers and reading the backs of all the cases before making that impossible decision. I can only afford one. Which game do I want to take home? Gaming wasn't just something we downloaded. It was something that we experienced. It's something that we shared as a memory. And for 30 years, physical games became part of the gaming culture itself. So when Sony announced that it plans to end production of new physical PlayStation game discs by January 2028, it wasn't just another corporate press release. For many gamers, it felt personal. But while players across social media were expressing disappointment, frustration, and concern, Wall Street had a completely different reaction. Sony stock climbed as much as 7% in the last couple of days after their announcement about going digital. Now let's think about that for a second. Gamers were debating whether this has marked the end of ownership of their personal games. Now, investors were celebrating because they saw higher profits. It's almost like watching two completely different worlds reacting to the same exact piece of news. One side saw nostalgia disappearing, while the other one saw opportunity and a quick buck. Now, before anyone grabs a pitchfork or PlayStation controller, we'd like to be honest. Sony did not make this decision because it hates physical games. Sony made this decision because, from a business perspective, the numbers are incredibly difficult to ignore. According to the company's own financial data, digital game downloads generated nearly $7 billion during the last fiscal year. Physical games, roughly $830 million. That is a massive difference. From a shareholder's perspective, the logic is obvious. No manufacturing costs, no printing artwork, no plastic, no shipping pallets across the world, no retailer taking a percentage from every sale. Every purchase stays inside of Sony's digital ecosystem. If you're an investor, you're probably thinking, why didn't they do this sooner? But gamers don't usually think about these kind of things like investors do. Gamers think about memories, collections, ownership, the feeling of walking into a store and finding out that one game you've been waiting for months, and now you're able to play it and it's in your possession. Now, while this announcement has struck such an emotional nerve with the gaming community, over the last 24 hours, something else has happened that's equally fascinating. Sony has remained almost completely silent following this announcement. Despite enormous discussion across social media, that silence has become part of the story itself, with many gamers wondering whether the company is listening to the backlash or is simply moving ahead with its plans. The internet has become flooded with reactions. Some people say this is inevitable. Others argue this is the worst decision PlayStation has made in years. And here's what's really interesting. Even many gamers who almost buy everything digital have acknowledged that removing physical games entirely could have consequences they hadn't considered before. Just because this debate isn't just about disc, it's about choice. Let's say a brand new game launches tomorrow. You open a PlayStation store and it's $70. Then you check a retailer, say Walmart, Best Buy, Target, take your pick. That same game is only 25, maybe 30 bucks on disc. Which one are you going to buy? Let's be honest. Most people are going to take the cheaper option, And that's exactly why physical media still matters. Competition. Physical retailers compete against digital storefronts, and digital storefronts compete against physical retailers. That competition helps drive sales, discounts, and consumer choice. If physical games disappear completely, who keeps digital pricing in check? And now, maybe Sony will lower prices. Maybe they don't. Nobody knows. But that is a fair question. Here's another one. When you buy a physical game, you can lend it to your brother, your sister, your best friend. You can trade it, you can sell it, you can display it, you can keep it 20, 30 years. You own something tangible. Digital purchases are different. You gain convenience, no disk swapping, instant downloads, automatic updates. But if you're relying on accounts, licenses, and digital storefronts, that exists entirely online. Now, before the comments explode, now this doesn't mean that Sony is going to reach into your house and take away your games. That's not what's happening. But it does raise a bigger question. As gaming becomes increasingly digital, what does that do to ownership actually? And what does that mean for millions of gamers who are having today now, I have to lighten the mood just for a second. Because somewhere in the warehouse, there's probably a lonely Blu-ray disc sitting in a box wondering, so you're saying there's no sequel for me? All right, cue the violin music. Okay, that's a bad joke. But seriously, this isn't just about nostalgia. This is about where gaming goes from here. And perhaps the biggest question of all is, if Sony can successfully move away from physical media, how long before the rest of the industry follows? Let's rewind the clock for a second. It's 1994. Sony is the new kid on the block. Nintendo dominates the industry. Sega is riding high with the Genesis. Most people weren't expecting Sony to become a serious competitor. Then something happened that changed gaming history forever. Sony embraced the CD-ROM. Nintendo and Sony tried to do a partnership, and that had failed. All right, so Nintendo was doing the cartridges. You got the Nintendo 64. Sony bet on discs. Those discs could hold dramatically more data. Developers suddenly had room for full motion video, orchestrated soundtracks, voice acting, and larger worlds that simply weren't practical on cartridges. And at the time, games became more cinematic. Metal Gear Solid, one of my favorites. Stories became deeper. The original PlayStation wasn't just another console. It changed the direction of the industry. Then came PlayStation 2. To this day, it is still the best-selling video game console of all time. Think about that. Over 160 million consoles found their way into homes around the world. How many of those memories involved walking into a store and picking up a physical game? Probably millions. Then came the PlayStation 3, Blu-ray technology, then PlayStation 4, record-breaking sales, then PlayStation 5, near instant loading times, ray tracing, breathtaking graphics. But though every generation, you always had something to admire. One thing remained, a familiar moment when opening a brand new game. For some people, the art cover was almost as important as the game itself. Collectors proudly displayed rows and rows of Blu-ray PlayStation cases, limited editions, steel books, collector's editions with maps, art books, soundtracks. Some series collections took decades to build. And now, as many gamers are wondering if that tradition is slowly coming to an end, all right, so put yourselves in Sony's shoes for just a minute, devil's advocate here. Imagine you're sitting in a boardroom, the finance department walks in, they place two reports on the table. One report says digital software generated nearly $7 billion, and the other one says physical software generated around $800 million. Which report are you paying more attention to? The short answer is obvious. Sony isn't any emotional company, it's a business. And businesses exist to make money. Investors expect growth. Shareholders expect profits. Executives are rewarded when revenue increases and cost decreases. Digital distribution checks every one of those boxes. No manufacturing, no shipping, no warehouses, no drivers getting, from point A to point B to deliver the load of games, no unsold copies sitting on the store shelves. Everything becomes faster, cheaper, significantly more profitable. That's exactly why investors rewarded Sony almost immediately after the announcement. The market wasn't reacting to the nostalgia, it was reacting to the future earnings. But here's where things become complicated. Sometimes the most profitable decision isn't necessarily the most popular one. Just because the spreadsheet says something makes financial sense doesn't automatically mean that customers are going to love it. History has shown us that companies have made plenty of decisions that look brilliant in quarterly reports, only to discover months later that customers' trust had quietly eroded. Trust is difficult to measure. You can't put it into nearly a pie chart, and you can't always calculate loyalty on a balance sheet. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's incredibly difficult to earn that. And one reason is this story has become so emotional is because many longtime PlayStation fans feel that they're watching a company that they grew up with move further away from a community that helped build it. Now, does that mean that Sony doesn't care about its gamers? No. That would be unfair to say. Sony has invested billions into first-party studios. They've created incredible single-player experiences. They push hardware technology forward. They've helped define modern gaming. Those things do deserve the recognition it rightly deserves. But companies can make outstanding products and still make decisions that divided their audience. Those two things can exist at the same time. This appears to be one of them. The argument I've seen repeatedly is this: if everyone buys digital anyway, what's the problem? Is that a fair question? Here's another one. If physical games truly didn't matter anymore, why has this announcement sparked so much enormous reaction? And why are gamers debating ownership? Why are collectors worried? Why are content creators producing long-hour discussions? And why are comment sections overflowing with thousands of replies? Clearly, physical media still means something to a lot of people. Maybe not everyone, but certainly more people than some expected. For more stories like this, please be sure to hit that like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys back in the next one.